wanted to take your calls right now on CPAC, and as we were going to break, I was talking about John Bolton and how he was pushing for, he thinks that we've got an isolationist foreign policy. Does it seem like that to you as we see the Cold War being restarted, as we see America interjecting itself into war after war after war? He thinks that that's isolationism. Can you imagine what he would like to do? This is what he said. He said, Adam Smith wrote that the first duty of the sovereign is to protect society from the violence of other nations. Great. How do we do that? Do we make ourselves safer by interjecting ourselves into each and every war? You know, let's go back to what John Quincy Adams said. He understood the nature of power. He had watched, as well as the other founders of this country, had watched Europe in a state of perpetual war and intrigue. And he said, the famous quote, "We don't go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. We wish well to the freedom and independence of all." But he also said this, you don't hear this as often, and think about the Ukrainian situation. Think about Syria. Think about Egypt, Libya. Think about Afghanistan, Iraq, all these different places. This is what he said. He said, America well knows that once we enlist under other banners than our own, even if it's banners of foreign independence, that we would involve ourselves beyond the power of extrication in all of the wars of interest and intrigue, of individual avarice, envy, and ambition, which assume the colors and usurp the standard of freedom. Sounds like he's talking about the color revolutions, doesn't it? Sounds like he's talking about our foreign policy. The fundamental maxim, he goes on to say, the fundamental maxim of Americans' policy should insensibly change from liberty to force if we were to do that. We would become the dictator of the world. Is that how people see us? Are we the shining city on the hill showing people the way to liberty? Or are we the poster children for a complete surveillance state, for a complete police state, for an interventionist empire that wants to get involved in every aspect, every corner of the globe? What do you think? That's the way I see the foreign policy. I'm interested to see this back and forth that is going on at CPAC. I want to see this discussion that's going on between the people who want us to be even more interventionist than Bush and Obama, who say that we are isolationists, the people like Marco Rubio, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, John Bolton. And on the other side, we've got Rand Paul, who will be talking today. We're going to have an interview between Alex Jones and the founder of the Daily Caller, Tucker Carlson. This is a never-before-seen interview going to be coming up in the very next segment. Don't miss this. This is a great interview on a wide variety of topics. But just before the break, we were talking about what's going on at CPAC and people's reactions to the different speeches that have been made there. Of course, we have Marco Rubio, John McCain, John Bolton, Lindsey Graham making the case for even more intervention than we see going on from Barack Obama. They think he's weak and isolationist, and we want to see how that's going to be pushed back from Rand Paul. Hopefully he'll have a different opinion about that today. But we wanted to get to the opinion of people who've been watching these speeches. Hugo, you were saying that you had been to CPAC in the past, and what do you think about this year, though? Have you watched any of the speeches?
It's Julio, David. You know, watching some of the speeches, for the most part, it seems like they are towing the neocon party line with some of their speeches. There are very few any liberty-minded speeches given at CPAC. I mean, even Mike Lee's speech, I saw a bit of it today, seemed more towards a party line than a real liberty-minded speech. You know, Donald Trump, you hear him speak, and this man has, if you follow his money, he's donated to the Democratic Party in the past, including money to Rahm Emanuel here in Chicago. So I really hope that Rand Paul really shines. If you look at the straw poll results from years past with Ron Paul winning the last few years, when I covered it in 2012, literally CPAC did their best to try to squash the libertarian revolution that was going on at that time with momentum Ron Paul was gaining.
That's right.
And
Sure did.
I'm not sure how I'm not sure how it's going, how it is this year, but with the speeches, you can tell they're trying to toe the party line. But from what I observed at CPAC, what the real impact for a libertarian-minded person going there is to talk with the people. For the most part, the people at CPAC, these conservatives that watch Fox News daily, they're good people. They're decent people, but they're being strayed in the wrong direction, being strayed towards that neocon line. But the libertarian-minded people, from what I saw, have done a great job in talking with the people, having civil debates, getting people to discuss NDAA from when I was there in 2012. Mm-hmm. And I hope that this year they're talking about the IRS, and they're talking about intervention, and they're talking about the Federal Reserve, and
and the NSA.
That's where the impact of CPAC comes, exactly, and the NSA, and many more topics, even GMOs. I know at CPAC they're having a panel about can libertarians and conservatives get along. So they're trying to sway the minds of those people at CPAC, and I'm pretty sure they're going to say they could get along, but they have to go towards a conservative mind.
Well, if they're going to take the traditional party line of intervention abroad, foreign wars, and metaphorical wars here at home, a war on drugs, the various wars that we've had here, the war of terror, if they're going to take these hard lines to create a police state here at home and an interventionist military everywhere around the world, that's a losing strategy. That's why the Republican Party is shrinking. If they're going to grow this party, they're going to have to take the moral high road. They're going to have to transcend these positions. But so far, unfortunately, I've seen even a lot of the newcomers, like I point out, Marco Rubio is now aligning himself with the old John McCain faction. And, who's always, this is the guy, John McCain is the guy that goes to every conflict as it's beginning around the world. So you see him meeting with Al-Qaeda in Syria, then you see him meeting with neo-Nazis in the Ukraine. Does that tell us that he's a made man of the New World Order, or what?
Symbols are powerful, and the globalists have hijacked the symbols of America. They've turned them into their own symbols. Well, we are restoring the idea of the true republic, not the counterfeit globalist empire, by promoting the icon George Washington and others. That's why we're rolling out an 100% made in America line of incredible pro-liberty apparel. We are repopularizing liberty. We are helping fellow Americans rediscover what made this country great. We are the spirit of 1776. We are 1776 worldwide. We are all brothers and sisters in arms in the animating contest of liberty in the long march towards humanity's ultimate destiny of freedom. Visit madein1776.com today and vote with your dollars to promote truly made in America, high-quality products, and promote the ideals of liberty.
Tucker Carlson was in studio and had an extensive interview with Alex Jones, but there was a much more extensive interview between the two of them that is we're going to air now for the very first time. And this is going to touch on things like the dictatorial moves of Obama, the attack on the Second Amendment, and it's going to talk about September 11th. You're going to want to see this. Here's that report.
Being a rugged all-American like Vladimir Putin, Tucker Carlson, host of Fox News and the owner of dailycaller.com, is down here in Texas to go wild boar hunting. And while he was in town, he graciously agreed to come in to the InfoWars studios to talk to us today. And so here he is in the flesh. But first, I want to play a clip of the great things he has to say about me.
Alex Jones.
Hey, you seem more popular than you are.
He certainly is.
I set my alarm to wake up to
I'll
this.
tell you what, I don't want any Alex Jones people in my house.
Now, Tucker, that was 4 years ago, and I've always, admired a lot of the work you've done, but I really appreciate you coming down to visit.
Hey, oh, are you kidding? I was having breakfast with a friend of mine in the media business about 3 months ago who mentioned your name. I said, Alex Jones? He said, yeah, he's a good guy. You should go meet him. And I thought, I'd love to. So I was going to be in Austin, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, what did you expect when you came in here?
I expected an armed compound, and that's exactly what I found. We're deep. For those who don't know where we are, we're about 150 feet below the surface of the Texas prairie here in a steel-reinforced silo. This was an ICBM missile silo at one point, wasn't it?
It was, but I mean, you noticed, though, that you had to hit Coke or Pepsi, and then that's when the door opened, and then you came down. We're only about 6 floors under the ground, though.
Awesome.
Do you like 50 caliber rifles?
I love one. I don't have one, but I would love a Barrett. I've always wanted. I'm a gun guy for sure.
Next time you're in town, we'll go out and go shooting them.
Honestly, I would love that.
I've taken Dave Mustaine out. I've taken Mike Judge out. A lot of folks shooting the 50s.
Well, for those who aren't here, you just showed me an I-beam, a steel I-beam, a construction beam with holes that big from the 50 cal. It's so impressive.
We do have 50 cals. We're not actually underground, though. We're on ground level.
Yeah, you are, sadly.
Actually, we have paintings of Mao and Lenin hanging on the walls. And he loved them.
I did. They were done up with glitter and stuff. No, I'm really glad to be here. And as to that tape, that was 4 years ago during the Iowa caucuses, and I was in 2.5 years ago, something like that, and this guy comes up to me with a microphone and starts asking me, was 9/11 an inside job? And I said to him, I'm as skeptical about the U.S. government as anybody, and I'm also very open-minded, willing to believe anything. I just don't think there's any evidence of that. And he just got in my face and wouldn't back off.
I know, he followed you for 7 minutes, so finally you said that. But I mean, I thought it was entertaining, so.
It was pretty funny. Adam Kokesh, who I think is in jail now. But anyway, I enjoyed the exchange.
Well, he finally got out, and he does have a lot of courage for the Second Amendment. But I do have a few 9/11 questions, but that's at the end. Let's come back to those if we can.
Great.
You are a pioneer in mainstream media that went into alternative media and has been very, very successful and covering a lot of libertarian, freedom-based news. I wouldn't call it left or right. Where do you think the media landscape is right now, and are we seeing the death of the state-run dinosaur media?
There's no question about it. I mean, and I should say I'm hardly a visionary. I only got into it because I got fired from dinosaur media. I was at MSNBC. The station turned pretty dramatically left. As you know, I didn't fit in. They canned me. I was unemployed with 4 kids. And I was at dinner with a college roommate of mine, and we were talking about what do we do next with our lives, and let's start something. So we did, and it seemed obvious. Digital is clearly the future. How soon the future will get here is an open question. A lot of people still get their news from broadcast television, from newspapers, but clearly that's changing. I would think 10 years from now, some of the thought leaders that, I mean, I don't think there will be an NBC Nightly News 10 years from now. I don't think there will be a Washington Post. That's all pretty obvious.
I think 5 years from now there'll be.
I think you're right. I think you're totally right.
Who is the original alternative media? Somebody like Matt Drudge?
Drudge certainly was. I was there. I knew Drudge right at the beginning in 97, 98 when he first started, and everyone mocked him. And I'll admit, because I'm not a visionary, I kind of mocked him too, though I thought he was ballsy, which I always have admired in anybody. Anyone who's brave, even if I disagree, I admire. And he was willing to give the finger to everybody who had power at the time. I remember going to a speech he gave at the National Press Club in 98, and I was in the press pit, all these reporters covering this, and he basically said, you're all going away, you'll all be unemployed, you're obsolete, and I am the future. And people scoffed, and I kind of scoffed because the herd instinct takes over, but then part of me was thinking, you know, he's probably right. And of course he was right.
All I knew as a radio talk show host back in 1996, when I was first on local radio, is I went to Drudge, and that's where I could see all the interesting stories every day for my radio show, and I could visit 15 other websites and not get half as much interesting stuff. I think he just has a pulse for not what he thinks is interesting, but what the public's going to think is interesting.
Totally right. At the core, look, the people who succeed are talented, by and large. It's one thing, you know, it's pretty easy to make a splash. You can get famous. It doesn't take that much. But to endure, to keep a successful career going, you've got to be talented, and I think Drudge is really talented. He listens to his own internal soundtrack.
Well, and he's also ideologically really is a patriot liberty guy.
He really, oh, totally.
Yeah, so that's the driving force.
And by the way, he was on this whole surveillance question really early, and people dismissed him as paranoid. You know, they're watching you, there are cameras everywhere.
They're going to have clones, they're...
Exactly.
All of it, yeah.
And of course, it turns out a lot of it's true. You know, like all the people in the 23 years I've been in the media, every week I get a letter usually written in crayon on the outside of the envelope saying, they're watching me. And I'm always like, this guy's mentally ill. Then it turns out they're right.
Well, that was my next point, is that as radical as a lot of the things I cover are, unfortunately, so much of it's now turning out to be true. I think despite all my political warts or whatever, that's why my show gets bigger and bigger exponentially, is because people are really losing confidence in the system. And I think the fall of Piers Morgan, because he never really had ratings to begin with, but he began to just fall from the beginning, shows a rejection of globalism, a rejection of elitism, and really some of that East Coast snobby anti-liberty garbage. What is your take on Piers Morgan? Because he is truly loathed by left, right, and center.
Well, I agree with that completely. I mean, I always feel sorry. I don't care if Satan got fired. I would feel bad for him having been a married man who got fired. So I never take pleasure in the firing of other people. However, he was almost uniquely annoying in that he's a foreigner, for one thing. For another, he had this kind of supercilious tone like, you're just not as smart as I am, that did make you kind of want to, you know, make people angry. And he didn't understand America. I mean, he just, you know, he thought our attachment to guns was like compensating for, you know, lack of male virility or something. He didn't understand it's baked into the cake that is this country. The right to bear arms is the linchpin of our freedoms. Without that, you know, you really don't have...
The revolution started when they came to take the guns.
Literally. So if you don't understand the Second Amendment, and maybe you're uncomfortable with it, maybe you don't like guns personally. I happen to like guns personally, and I like to hunt. But even if you don't, you recognize if you were born in this country that it's like not this random thing the founders kind of threw in there. It's the Second Amendment. Number 2, right after freedom of speech. There's a reason.
Well, speaking of that, we see talk of ending net neutrality, talk of internet IDs, taxation. We see big dinosaur media promoting it, openly wanting to shut down their competition, DrudgeReport.com, DailyCaller.com, WorldNetDaily.com, Infowars.com. I don't think they can put the genie back in the bottle, but what do you think overall will be the establishment's response to Congress having lower than a 10% approval rating and all of their credibility draining away? The New York Times saying, as you know, a few months ago, we don't have any credibility. We can't set the agenda. Nobody listens to us anymore.
That's right. Well, I mean, there's a free-for-all, basically, right now. The people the public look to for guidance and to make sense of the news are discredited. Basically, every institution's discredited. I'm not sure that's a good thing. I'm not really sure I want to live in a country where no one has credibility, but that's kind of where we are right now, and that's why you're seeing this kind of chaotic political environment. I would say one thing about the Congress and the president. The Congress has a terrible, 10%. The president is literally less popular than the crackhead mayor of Toronto, Rob Ford.
Yes.
Literally. But they still control the levers of power. So the president still runs the executive branch, Congress still gets to make the laws, raise the revenue. They can still absolutely wreck your life if they want to. So they have no popularity, they have no moral authority, but they retain massive amounts of power. It's a weird, weird situation.
And it's happened a lot throughout history. Seeing Obama, undoubtedly, constitutional scholars left, right agree. If you disagree, tell me why. Power grab on the power plants, on the military, saying NATO's over our military, on Obamacare, on borders, on immigration. Truly, I'm not saying he is a dictator. I'm saying he's turning the office of the presidency into a unitary executive dictator 2.0.
Well, that's always the hope of every president. I mean, people look, executives want more power. You know, the guy in charge doesn't want to have to deal with like inconvenient things like other people's opinions. And that's why we have a 3-part system where you have the judiciary, you know, the courts, you have the legislative branch of the Congress, and then the president has to deal with those 2 branches. What I'm amazed by is how unwilling Congress has been to rein in the president. He's basically said to them, I don't care about you, I'm going to write my own laws. You would think they would stand up as one and say, whoa, we reserve the right to write the laws. Like, that's what the Constitution says. There's a reason for that. And instead, they're so very passive. The Democrats are passive because it's their party and they will do whatever the president asks. But Republicans have been weirdly passive on that, and I'm not really sure why.
Well, I think it's because you've got a lot of offshore interests that basically have diplomatic immunity, and they don't need a free market. They can just control government and get the corporate welfare and the insider deals and create a monopoly system. I think that's really what the left and right haven't woken up to, is that more and more it's a rigged game.
Well, to some extent, it is. I mean, look, people don't want competition if they can get away with it. If I could pass a law requiring everyone to read the Daily Caller every day, you know, I like to think I wouldn't pass the law, but I'd be sorely tempted. That's why the insurance companies got into Obamacare at the very beginning. In exchange for losing their freedom, they gained a captive market. You know, the mandate, you know, the requirement to buy health insurance insured them lots of new customers. So it is, to that extent, it is a rigged game.
You are watching the best of the Alex Jones Show, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central. Watch live at Infowars.com/show or become a member of InfoWarsNews.com and help us take resistance to the next level.